in order to do this, I'm going to restrict to two particular types of secure computation protocols. Basically, I'm going to be talking about delegated quantum computation. So the idea of delegated quantum computation is that, at least as it was originally envisaged, when people were imagining what the future would be like, they thought, oh well, maybe there will be, we know it's hard to build quantum computers, so maybe they won't be widely available. So maybe when quantum computers first appear, they will be, kind of hooked up, you can access them over the internet, something like that, but really they're sitting in some facility in a university or in a company somewhere. And it turns out that this is a prediction that's starting to come true. So this is a screen capture of the IBM quantum experience. So this is basically a 5 superconducting qubits that are hooked up to the internet, and there's a little interface on it, so you can build your quantum circuit, and you can hit run. And when you run it, it runs the circuit that you built on this device, sitting in IBM in the US, and you get the result back sometime later. So actually, it seems like good timing to talk about this, because just as I was going to bed last night, I noticed on Twitter that IBM had unveiled 17 qubit device that they are also planning to hook up to the internet. So it seems like this model where you have a computer sitting at some center somewhere, but you have maybe many users trying to access it, maybe remotely or at least from terminals in the same region, is not that crazy. So it seems like it's starting to be the model that people are pursuing, at least for kind of devices in the medium term. Okay, so the first type of protocol I want to talk about is something called blind quantum computing. So the basic idea in blind quantum computing is that you have some user, Alice, and you have some guy who is operating a quantum computer called Bob. Or, this doesn't have to be one person, but you can just think about it as the quantum computer side of the protocol. And the basic idea is that Alice has limited computational power. So basically she has a laptop or something like this, or she has a desktop or whatever, and she would like to communicate with Bob with this remote quantum computer in order to be able to run a quantum computation. Now, the important thing about this is that Alice doesn't have enough power to be able to perform the computation herself. And she also doesn't trust Bob. On Bob's side, he has a quantum computer, so he can run the computation. And he's willing to help Alice do it. Maybe she's paying him. But he won't give Alice the device. So maybe that's because it needs to be in some centralized facility, maybe it's because the device itself is sensitive, maybe because it's hard to calibrate, or maybe just because there's commercial, there's trade secrets or something involved, or anything like this. And so Bob doesn't want to sell a device to Alice, that she could run the computation on her own premises, completely isolated from the rest of the world, try to build some chamber that doesn't let any signals in or out, and use it to run her computation. But in this scenario, she can't do that, so she has to rely on Bob for help. So what we would like is for some way for Alice to delegate the computation to Bob, and that doesn't reveal what the computation is to Bob. So she's trying to keep the computation to be performed secret from Bob. So even if someone has complete access to the hardware running the program, they shouldn't be able to learn what the computation was. So there's kind of a appeal for this kind of thing because if you think, for example, a lot of computation is currently delegated, just classical computation is run on, for example, Amazon, on the various Amazon cloud offerings. So this is something that happens a lot in the classical world, and you could guess maybe it's likely to happen in the quantum world given recent developments. So the first thing I want to talk about is what it means for something to be secure in this model. And I would like to say that all of this work was done right at the start when people started looking into these protocols, but it wasn't, it came much later. So the original idea behind hiding a computation, or this kind of blind quantum computation, is that Bob shouldn't be able to learn from the information he receives during the protocol what Alice's computation was. So if you try to formulate that in a relatively direct way, you come up with something like this. The protocol B is, on input X is blind, while leaking at most some function L of X. If the distribution of classical quantum information obtained in the protocol P is fixed and dependent only on the leaked information L of X. So you could say, why do we have this leaked information at all? And one of the reasons for this is that when Bob runs the computation, he is going to know something about computation. That's inevitable. Unless he doesn't know when the computation stops, he's always going to learn some upper bound on the amount of time he spent running the computation. So he'll learn something about the complexity of the computation. And this is basically going to be the circuit depth, or at least an upper bound of the circuit depth. Because you could always pad it. So you could always do operations that cancel out after a certain time to make it appear longer than it really is. The other thing is, he's going to know how much memory this device uses. If he has 17 qubits in his device, or 100,000 qubits, or whatever, he knows he didn't run something with 28 million qubits. Because they just can't all fit in his device. So inevitably, he's going to learn something about the number of qubits involved in computation and the depth of the computation. But you would like him to learn no more than this. Okay, and what we're saying basically is that if you know the number of qubits he uses and the amount of time he uses, then all of the information in the protocol that's exchanged from Alice to Bob, and vice versa, should be independent of the computation Alice is running. So from Bob's point of view, the communication should look identical, independent of what Alice's computation is. Okay, so it turns out that that's a reasonable enough definition, but it's not very well behaved if we think about composing, if we think about various protocols together. So if we want to use blind quantum computation as part of a larger protocol. So for example, there have been some proposals to use blind computation as a mechanism within quantum money protocols to verify that quantum coins are valid or not. Now, a problem with this is that the security of most of the protocols that I'm going to discuss is only proven as a standalone protocol. If Alice has some additional information, if Bob has some additional information about what Alice might be trying to do, or has some way to influence the distribution of her possible choices of computation, then in that case, the security groups don't really cover it. So what we need is a stronger form of security. So we need a stronger definition of security, and to that end, there have been introduced various composable security definitions. And by that, what I mean is that they specify the protocol. They specify blind computation as some kind of ideal protocol. So in this case, the left side is taken to be Alice's input and output. So Alice specifies some input state psi A that contains a description of the computation to be performed, including where any measurements are and any initial state that needs to be included. And she can get out the output of the computation as row A. And then on Bob's side, he can essentially enter a single digit to decide whether he's going to cheat or not. So he's going to make a decision as to whether he completely complies with the protocol or whether he wishes to deviate in some way. And when Bob decides to cheat, this bit is essentially set to 0 instead of 1. And when Bob decides to cheat, some leaked information comes out, L of psi A, that's essentially the equivalent of this LX up here. So it's just leaking something about the input state psi A. And then Bob also maybe gets to inject some description of a way of cheating, a way of disrupting the protocol. So what this D captures here is basically Bob's choice of how to disrupt the computation. Okay, so the only thing that Bob is learning is whatever the leaked information is, but he has some ability to perhaps affect the outcome of the computation in some predefined way. Okay, so this gives a very kind of idealized picture of blind quantum computation. And what you would like to be able to do is say, if you can achieve this, it doesn't matter how you achieve it. Once we know that the protocol satisfies the security, this composable security definition, then what we can say is that, well, wherever we actually have a real protocol, we can just erase it and just throw in this ideal box instead. Because we know we've hopefully proven that the protocol we're going to use is equivalent to this ideal formulation here. So in this framework, you have a client. So if we actually look at a real protocol, you have some client and you have some server, and the client implements some protocol on their side, so they have some set of instructions that they have to follow. So we'll label it pi A. And on the server side, there's some set of instructions that they follow, which we can label pi D. Now, the server may be honest or they may be dishonest. So we don't really know what pi D will be, but we know what pi A is, because Alice isn't going to try to undermine her own computation. We only need to worry about server deviations with protocol. So the basic idea is that when we combine Alice's protocol with Bob's protocol, interacting via some communication channel, maybe with multiple rounds, Alice sending something to Bob, and back and forth, maybe quantum information, maybe it's classical information, what we would like is to say that this here is basically equivalent to our ideal functionality. And in order to do that, we need to set up some definition that we need to prove our protocol satisfies. So we need to say that the protocol is blind if it satisfies some particular mathematical property. And we want to capture the fact that pi D might change. So if Bob is acting maliciously, he might change what pi D is. So what we do is we get our security definition from combining this ideal functionality with some simulator here. And what the simulator does is it has the same connection as Bob's side of the ideal functionality. So where the ideal functionality has an input of some bit from Bob deciding if he's going to cheat or not, the simulator has an output that gives some of this. And where it leaks some information L of psi A, well, there's an input on the simulator for that. And where there's some D, that's some CPCP map that's injected to disrupt the computation, well, the simulator has some output for that. So that tells us what the left side of the simulator is. So I guess you can see we could plug the simulator, the left side of the simulator plugs into the right side of this ideal resource. Okay? And on the right side of the simulator, what you have is you have this kind of back and forth communication that matches up with Alice's side, with the side of protocol pi A that interacts with the communications channel. So basically, the simulator basically plugs into the ideal resource and then generates the same communication stream, the same kind of interaction with the server as would happen if Alice was running her protocol pi A. Okay, so the basic idea then is you say that a protocol is blind if the protocol, the bit in green here, this client with pi A and her input psi A and her output rho A is this piece, and the communications channel is equivalent to plugging the simulator directly into the ideal resource. Now, you could say, why is that blind? Well, the reason that's a good definition for blindness is that if you look at how the simulator connects to the ideal resource, only the leaked information passes between the two of them. Only the information L psi A that is allowed to be leaked in the definition of blindness is passed from one to the other. There's no way when you tell the simulator is the ideal resource that anything about psi A other than L of psi A can be passed to this interface on the far right hand side. Okay, so that gives a much stronger definition of blindness than this kind of simple definition that we just expect the distribution of information to not depend on the input. But as I say, this is much later work. But it gives a very concrete definition for security definition. Sorry, a very concrete security definition for the problem. So essentially the first protocol that could be called blind quantum computation was introduced by Andrew Childs in 2005. And he called it something different. The term blind quantum computation wasn't coined until some time later. Essentially, he proposed this under the name of secure assisted quantum computation. And the basic idea was that you have some client who has a large quantum memory. So they can store a lot of qubits. And they're able to perform Foley operations on those qubits. So the big memory, they can perform Foley operations on them, and they can send them to and from a server. And what the server does, the server is basically a universal quantum computer, and the basic idea is that the client will send qubits to the server, and the server will apply some gates on them, and they'll be returned to the client. Now, you could say, well, if the client has this capability here, the ability to do Foley operations on quantum memory, can they not do everything? And the answer is not really. They don't have access to handling gates, they don't have access to things like handlers. So if they start out with a bunch of qubits in the zero state, they can only swap them they can only flip them to the one state. They can't get a plus state out of it, for example, and they certainly can't make objects. So there's a limited amount they can do. And if they have access to a server that can perform just individual Hammar gates, individual CNOT gates, individual T gates, for example, just on a single qubit or two qubits that are sent to them and then sent back, then they can perform universal computation. And the basic idea of how you hide the computation from the server is very simple. So you start out with some initial state for your quantum computation, and then you use the random Foley operators you're allowed to apply a quantum one-time path to the qubits. And then you send the qubits to the server, and the server applies some gates. They just apply some fixed sequence of gates. They're always going to apply a Hammar, then a CNOT, then a T, or something like this. And they'll just go through that cycle again and again and again and again. And when you want to perform a CNOT on your computation, you send a qubit as part of the computation. And when you want to just ignore a gate, you know the server's going to perform, say, a T gate, but you want a CNOT gate. So what you do is you just send them some extra qubit. You don't need to use the qubit you don't need to use the qubit in your computation. You just use the spare one you have. As a dummy. And you send that to them, they waste the time of doing the T gate and they send it back to you, but now you're on to the next gate in the sequence. And you can do that to choose which gates you want at any time. So all that's happening is you're choosing which qubits to send at any one point in time. And then when you choose the qubits to send, you apply a new quantum one-time path every time. And you could say, well, isn't this quantum one-time path going to interfere with computation? And the answer is not really. So the quantum one-time path won't commute with all of the gates. So it's not like you can do the whole computation with the quantum one-time path on your data. But you can correct for its effect on each gate with another gate. So if the first operation I want to perform is a Hammar gate, I can account for the effect of the Foley operation when I send it to the quantum computer. And when I get back, I know there's just some different Foley correction I need to apply in order to obtain the proof state. I can do the same with any Clifford group gate. So I essentially get the whole of the Clifford group for free because I know what operations I'm also going to apply. So I can always correct for its effect on the one-time path. The only time you start to run into difficulty with this is when you have something like a T gate, when you have something outside the Clifford group, or a Toffoli gate. And when that happens, you know you're going to need to perform some correction. However, if it's a T gate or if it's a Toffoli gate, you know the correction you're going to perform is inside the Clifford group. So either you have to perform some correction like a CNOT gate or a Toffoli gate, or not, depending on the particular key you chose. But you know that yourself. The client knows what correction they need to perform, so they're just adapting the circuits to their key to compensate for the effect of the quantum one-time path as it goes through the gates of the circuit. And this lets the client delegate a computation to a server in months, essentially perfectly private. The main drawback of this is that the client needs quite a lot of resources. They need a large quantum memory, and they need the ability to perform high-quality Foley operations, so they're not losing computation with noise. And they need the ability to be able to choose qubits arbitrarily from within their memory, apply the Foley operation to them, and then transmit them, and also receive them back from the server. So while this is not enough for universal computation, it's still quite a high load to place on the client. So that brings us to a big class of protocols for blind computation that have been proposed. The basic idea behind all of these is based on a model of computation called measurement-based quantum computation, which was initially proposed by Revendorf and Briegel. And the basic idea is that you prepare some entangled state for your computation, and you have some control computer that decides how you should measure this state. So there's some big entangled state that's prepared, the first qubit gets measured in some basis, and then based on the output results, the measurement basis for the next qubit is decided, and so on. Now, generally in measurement-based computation, the resource state that's prepared maybe on the depth of the circuit you want to implement and the width, the total number of qubits. So the way this is used in blind computation is generally fairly straightforward. Generally what's done is that you have some client who is taking over the part of the control computer, and you have the server, Bob, who's taking over the preparation of the resource state and maybe some of the operations involved in measurements, something like that. Okay. Now, there's a number of different protocols and they work in different ways. The basic idea behind measurement-based computation is that you have some set of input qubits that will propagate through the quantum state. So they're usually in the early work of this, they're always kind of starting from the left-hand side of the resource state and propagating to the right-hand side. But you can make some other resource states that it's less clear how they propagate through. But generally, you're going to be able to think of some input set of qubits that are measured essentially first. And when they're measured, the information contained on them is propagated to the next layer of qubits along some particular lines that I'm going to call lines of flow. Basically, each of the qubits in the state, each of the vertices in this graph represents a physical qubit prepared in a plus state, so equal to position of 0 and 1. And each of the edges in the graph, including the ones with arrows, correspond to a CZ gate, so a control phase gate applied between those qubits. So by making adaptive measurements, you can propagate the information from the input qubit over to the output qubits while applying some arbitrary quantum computation. And the computation that's performed depends only on the measurement angle and where the particular edges in the graph are. Now, it turns out that you can take certain states, or certain families of states, like this kind of rectangular arrangement here, where just the black qubits, the black lines represent the edges and the black dots represent the vertices in the graph, that are universal. So this is just some kind of rectangular arrangement, and it has a standard pattern to it. So there's only two parameters that specify this family, basically how long it extends and how far down it goes. So it gives you just some rectangular graph. And the basic idea is that the depth in this direction represents the total number of logical qubits in the computation, and the breadth in this direction represents the depth of the quantum circuit, so the total number of gates that are going to be applied. So the longer this is, the more sequential gates can be applied, and the further down it extends here, the more logical qubits can propagate through it. And essentially you can think of the qubits as propagating from left to right along straight lines. And it's possible to break this up into these regions of 10 qubits each, and specify angles on them to measure in the xy plane. So these are all measured in the xy plane. And depending on how the angles are specified, you can either use this to implement arbitrary local rotations on either of the two logical qubits that passes through one of these cells, or to apply an entangled gate such as a C0 between logical qubits. So this gives you a resource state that's universal for quantum computation, but particularly it's universal with just xy plane measurements. So the first protocol to exploit this was, well, really, so I'm involved in it, but also Anne Broadbent and Elham Giuseppe came up with it, and the basic idea is that the client is just going to prepare some single qubit state and send it to the server. And the server is going to entangle these single qubit states to make one of these brickwork states, so the same kind of universal state, I mentioned on the previous slide. Now, the difference is, rather than preparing plus states, Alice is going to apply some random Z rotation to the plus state. So now it's not necessarily a plus state, it's just some random state in the equatorial plane of the block sphere. And she sends it to the server. And the server arranges these in some regular grid, and then applies these control phase operations between them to generate this massive entangled state. And you could say, well, that's not the resource state you told us about, because these weren't plus states. But they have this random Z rotation applied. And this Z rotation applied, this Z rotation can use with the control phase gate. So it's the same as if we prepared the ideal the ideal brickwork state here. So as if the server had constructed the ideal state, and then Alice had applied these random Z rotations after that state had been prepared. And this is just because her Z rotations can use with the control phase operations. So this gives her a way to perform measurement-based computation, where Alice is sending a measurement angle to the server. They're saying, now rotate this qubit by pi over 4 or something like that, and measure it in the x spaces. So Bob is supposed to do a Z rotation by, say, pi over 4 on a particular qubit, and then measure it in the x spaces. But that pi over 4 adds on to the random rotation that Alice previously applied. So in this way, she's hiding the true rotation, the true measurement basis from Bob. And it turns out that this is sufficient to hide the entire computation. You can kind of work through it and see how it works. Essentially, Alice is preparing some randomly rotated states in the equatorial plane that we can write as a true plus state, plus some random rotation, plus some random phase flip. And she's sending them to Bob. He's performing some rotation and then measuring the x basis and sending the result to Alice. And essentially, it turns out that all of these operations cancel, so that